Right, this is part 2 of sorting this leak out on this Land Rover. I'll show you what I'm going to use. In my gun here, this is Napa Body Pro. It's a seam sealer, but it's not a, how do we say, there's no big solvents in it or anything like that. But it's good stuff because it always remains flexible. You know, like it'll make a skin, but it remains flexible. I've used it quite a lot. Now, one of the things you've got to remember whenever you're using sealers and fillers or anything like this, is you've got to have a solvent on hand to clean up, because if not, it's a bugger. Once this has gone off, when it makes a skin, maybe too late. You can get it off with scrapers and things like that, but we don't want to do that. So the best thing to take this stuff off with is petrol. Believe it or not, just common garden petrol. That's a solvent. And it works the same whenever you're doing glues or paints or anything like that. Always have a little bit of solvent on hand just to tidy up. So what I'm going to do, something different on these things here. In days gone by, I used to fill them with grease. I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to fill them with this. That should work. So all I'm going to do is just get into the cavity. Now I've got a pneumatic gun here, which will force sealer right down into the corners. Oops, where are you? You're going down there now, aren't you? It's hard to do this and see you at the same time, but bear in mind, even if you've got it a little bit over, it doesn't matter. If we fill the cavity in, it's got less chance of getting water behind it. Now you're going to say, Mike, that looks a right mess, doesn't it? And that's why we've got a little spatula here, and we're going to force it right down tight into that stuff and try not to get it in the threads like I've just done there. But it doesn't really matter too much. We'll get it like that. We'll clean this off. This excess off. No, we'll tell you what we'll use this excess for. Wait a minute, come across here. I turned the camera off there by mistake. We're going to use this excess to put in the hole. Like that. Fill it up. So we don't waste anything. And then get the gun again. Just put the gun on and fill there a solvent. Now when we put the screws through, it'll push through. The sealer will push through from the other side, and then we'll put the gasket on. Now this might be a bit tricky. I don't know how we're going to do this. I've got some paper gaskets, and that's all they are. They're just paper. And of course, with the body moving around like this, they don't seem to last all that long. Now, you'd have thought they'd lasted longer than 25 years, wouldn't you? So, what I'm going to do is poke the bolts through from the inside. The bolts are all the same length. I'm going to clean these up before I put them on, but I'll just show you there's a washer, a thick washer that goes behind this one here. So I'm just going to clean these bolts up and we'll come back. Right, back again. Now I'm going to poke these through. I'll try and zoom in a bit and you can see what I'm up to. Looks a mess, doesn't it? But we can clean it up. So we're going to put the gasket on now. The gasket will only go on one way on the bottom. Yeah. And we'll clean off the end of those threads. And we'll put the top gasket on. We'll get rid of a lot of that excess. Put that one through there. Then we get our impact that we left at the other side. Now usually these are a bit of a bugger to do, because if you put a new seal in you'll find it's very difficult, but with this one it might not be too bad. I'm going to try and locate that front stud first, the top one. Bottom one. Quite that one. Let me have a look and see if it's square. It's very difficult. It's easy with two on this. Oh yeah, I've got it cockeyed, look. Evenly, and this is where we have to be quick with our solvent. You can see it's squidged out all over the place. Just going to clean all that excess off. I know it's a mess, but the only thing we can do. Sealers are terrible. Don't use silicone. Silicone will make it even worse. Now that top one's kicked over a bit. I'm just going to back off that top one. Just use getting a bit of this off my hands, because it's everywhere. Petrol never harmed anybody. Right, let's try and sort out that top one. We might have to back them all off. We don't want to take them out too much. Our spatula. Clean it off. See if we can push that gasket across a little bit. No, it's still a bit tight, I have to back it a bit more. Again, this stuff dries pretty damn quick. And this one here, push that one across a bit. Right, then we'll tighten it down. Clean off our screwdriver and stuff like that before. Got a bit of sealer on the inside of the door trim. Like I say, the thinner it is, the quicker it dries. got to be sharpish. Now unfortunately this car's been painted before, and you do have a tendency to break this, break the paint, but there's nothing much we can do about it, my friend. There we go. Now, to tidy up on the inside, I'll just use a cable tie. Take off any excess. There we go. Get some more paper. I always throw the old bits of paper on the floor rather than leaving them on top of the car because you can make a right mess. There we go. There's still a little bit on that door trim, I think. There. That's good. Now that should have sorted that problem out. Well, it will do anyway. But for a couple of paper gaskets, it's certainly done the job. So what we do now is we put it outside and try it again before putting all the trim in, because we don't want we want to see if it's leaking again. But I'll report back if it's leaking. But I think that time, by putting plenty of sealer on both sides, if you see what I mean, it's got a good chance of settling down, because when we put sealer around the bolts, when we compress it, it's going to compress and expand inside that joint. It'll be a bugger to take out again, but hopefully we won't have to take it out again. So we'll report back on this a lot later and see if it doesn't leak. Fingers crossed.